welcome to our Friday feature movie spotlight, discussing the latest movie releases and the world of Korean cinema. And we do that with the help of our esteemed duo of film critics. First to my right, we have Jason Bechervaise. Jason, hello.
Hello, Jango. Great to be here as always.
And to my left, we have Darcy Paquette here in the studio as well. Hello, Darcy.
Hi, great to see you.
Okay, this week we'll be reviewing one new Hollywood release before looking ahead to one of the major events in the Korean film industry calendar. That is the Busan International Film Festival. That's coming up later. But first, we have director/actor Kenneth Branagh's return to the big screen once again as the Belgian mastermind sleuth Hercule Poirot. It's called A Haunting in Venice. The title in Korean is 베니스유령살인사건. It is Branagh's third adaptation of an Agatha Christie novel in 6 years, following on from Murder on the Orient Express in 2017 and Death on the Nile in 2022. So, Jason, can you set this one up for us?
Yeah, sure. Kenneth Branagh is certainly having fun, as we were talking about before the show, putting together this, I guess, mini franchise. Some Murder on the Orient Express, it's been adapted into films before. It grossed over $350 million worldwide on its original release, and Death on the Nile, even though it was delayed and affected, by the pandemic, it ended up taking close to $140 million US. So very successful, and this film is a little bit different, I would say, but it is based on a screenplay by Michael Green, the co-writer of Logan and Blade Runner 2047, whereas the first two films in the franchise were based on some of Agatha Christie's most famous works. This one is actually somewhat different in that it is adapted from a lesser-known novel, Halloween Party, but location's been moved from England to Venice, and so it's somewhat different. Which I think really adds to the backdrop. It's in a way is one of the kind of the central characters of the film. So
right. So Branagh taking perhaps a bit more liberties with this particular adaptation than his previous two Poirot films. So Darcy, can you tell us about the story itself?
Sure. The film's set in 1947, and so it follows on from the events in Death on the Nile. And as it opens, Poirot is officially retired, which should fool nobody. But he's living in Venice, kind of, very quiet and comfortable life. And then one day he's visited by a friend who's a mystery novelist, played by Tina Fey. And this friend convinces him to come to this seance. It's going to take place on Halloween. The novelist insists that the mystic who's going to run this seance is like the real thing, that, she's not a trickster. And Poirot, of course, doesn't believe in the supernatural, and so he's naturally skeptical. But he comes to this, supposedly haunted palazzo on the Grand Canal. And then, the seance begins to start, and then the mystic is played by Michelle Yeoh. She has a few kind of surprises in store for the detective. And basically, the film, there are murders, for him to solve. Things get tense. But also at the same time, it's kind of, going back and forth between this theme of, does the supernatural exist? And, can Poirot kind of, crack the... can he prove that actually everything is based on cold, hard logic?
Sure, so it's playing with that idea. So, Jason, it's been an interesting franchise, mini franchise, as you said. They've done quite well in the box office, despite, I would say, middling reviews. And even this traditional murder mystery format has been somewhat overshadowed by the Knives Out franchise. Right, yeah. But Branagh clearly seems to enjoy making these films. What did you think of this one, and how does it compare to the previous ones?
Yeah, so it's certainly interesting. There's clearly an appetite for murder mysteries. You mentioned Knives Out, and you got the sequel as well, the Knives Out sequel, and there's a number of murder mysteries on streaming platforms. Clearly people want to watch them. They are fun to watch, right? Who is the killer? You're asking that question, in your head, as you're watching the film. And this film, I think it taps into this. The first half of the film, especially, it is darker. It's supernatural, and there's talking about appetites and hunger for certain genres. Horror films are doing really well in the United States at the moment. We're seeing that with films such as Scream and various other franchises and films that have done really well at the box office. Some surprisingly so, and so there are actually some genuine scares in the first half of the film. And then, in the second half, it's more of a conventional murder mystery. He brings them all together and he starts talking about who he thinks the killer is, and
locks them up so they can't leave.
Exactly, locks them up, and then you got twists and turns along the way. And so in a sense, I guess he's you've got a bit of everything in there. And so in that sense, it is different. It is darker. And yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Actually, I think it's the best film of the franchise. Well, mini franchise so far, by quite a margin. I wasn't the first two are fine, but I actually like the original films. But yeah, no, this was, I think, actually quite good. And films set in Venice, I think they are quite compelling. Just look at film, even Casino Royale. That kind of climatic sequence at the end, that works really well, partly because of the setting, and I think that's true here too.
Okay, so the best of the three in Jason's books. Darcy, what do you think? Has it perhaps helped that he's been able to take more liberties because it is based on a lesser known work? You don't feel like you have to pay homage as much as to the original works as such. For example, moving it to Venice.
Yeah, I think that, he does feel a little bit freer in this one. And he's having fun in all of them, but I think when you're adapting something that's so famous and that people are so familiar with, then you have to kind of tread lightly on certain aspects of it because people come in with certain expectations.
Right.
And the advantage to this is that, he's kind of set up the main character and the general mood and the situation, but people aren't familiar with this story, and so he can really take it in some slightly unexpected directions. Venice provides the spectacle in this film. There are the scares and everything else, but the city does look quite amazing on film. And personally, I'm really happy to see a franchise that's kind of aimed at a somewhat older audience, because that kind of film is sort of an endangered species these days. It foregrounds plot and its ensemble cast rather than special effects. And yeah, I just, as kind of an alternative to the superhero franchises, Knives Out is great, but Knives Out, of course, is going to Netflix. And
sure.
So that feels different as well. And so I am hoping for more of these. We'll have to wait and see how this does at the box office.
Okay, so you enjoyed it as well?
Yeah, I did. I think it was fun. And yeah, it's just the franchise seems to be picking up momentum. There's some franchises that start out well with the first film and then they diminishing returns set in and it kind of goes down in terms of energy. But this one does seem to be kind of picking up a bit of momentum.
He makes them pretty quickly, doesn't he?
One every 2 years on average.
Yeah, it's not like you've got like a 5-6 year gap between films. He
nice
works hard, yeah.
And it's nice to see a middle budget film do well as well, because they've been struggling a lot in Hollywood recently. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this film does again at the box office next to some of the bigger films, the bigger action and superhero films of the year, as we mentioned earlier. Okay, let's move on now to Biff. The 28th Busan International Film Festival is still a few weeks away, but tickets will go on sale next week for this, the largest film festival in Korea. This year it's scheduled to be held from October 4th to the 13th, and we thought we'd take some time to preview it early this year, especially for any listeners who might be interested in attending. So, Jason, can you introduce us to this year's festival? What are some highlights of this year's programme?
Yeah, so it's always a highlight. Actually, speaking of highlights of the year to attend Busan, and so one of the things that I tend to focus on as a Korean film, I guess, enthusiast, is the Korean cinema program.
Sure.
So that kind of it's interesting how they've traditionally broke it down into panorama and vision, which is where you get a lot of the indie films. But now they've got like streaming titles as well. You've got Believe Fever 2, which I'm quite keen to see. I like the first film, and that's going straight to Netflix. And then in terms of the indie films, I mean, one of the things I love about Busan is that it really is, you don't know what film's gonna come out the other side as the kind of the festival darling or the critical darling.
Okay.
And so it is a journey of discovery, and that's what I love about it. And it's finding the films that go on to screen at other festivals and secure distribution deals and win prizes. And you get directors making names for themselves. You get performers getting their first or maybe early kind of breakthrough performance. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know which film is gonna break through, but I'm sure one or two of them. So, and there's also the new Currents titles that you get either feature debuts or sophomore features by Asian filmmakers, so
Sure.
that's one to look out for. And then there's a whole bunch of things as well. There's also open talks. This includes Chai Yong-fat, who will be in Busan to receive the Asian Filmmaker of the Year award. So lots to see in Busan, and there's also plenty of people to see as well. Keeps you busy.
See all the stars. Now, Darcy, unfortunately, though, there's been a bit of controversy in the months leading up to the festival, with both the festival chairman and festival director turning in their resignations. The festival is going ahead, but does it look like that turmoil will affect the festivities itself?
I mean, my feeling right now is that people on the ground attending the festival won't notice that much of a difference from previous years. Although it is true that, I mean, the controversy did scare away a few of the festival's sponsors. So
Right.
their budget is less than it used to be. I mean, they've scaled down the program. They have only 209 films this year.
Only.
Only.
Just a few. Although there are definitely fewer Korean films this year.
Sure, I believe there were over 300 the previous year as well.
Yeah. So personally, I think 200 is a good number.
It makes it easier to hunt through and find those
Sure.
discoveries.
Yeah, and they've had to downgrade a few, or downsize in some ways too. They used to have this big kind of academic forum, and that has been cancelled for this year. And more than anything, they haven't had a lot of time to prepare the festival. And so you can feel that, just in, the timing of their press releases and everything else, they're kind of rushing to, get everything ready in time. So we'll see during the actual festival if they're able to pull it off. I mean, basically, the interesting thing will be what happens after the festival, because, this controversy was basically a series of power struggles within the organization, and that led to the festival director turning in his resignation, and then the festival chairman. And so after the festival will be when everybody gets together and decides who's going to lead this festival into the next decade. And, it's possible that we're going to see a younger generation take the helm, which would be interesting. But there's going to be a lot of fighting between now and then.
I see. So this year's festival is a bit of a transitional one, it seems, then. Okay. Jason, let's quickly run through some of the things that you might be looking forward to.
Yeah, I mentioned the new discoveries, but it's also worth mentioning, if I may, there's a special focus on the Korean American filmmaking talent. Of course, we've got Lee Isaac Chung, rather, from Minari. He's now a hugely reputable filmmaker. We've also got Celine Song, her new film Past Lives. It's actually just been released in the UK. I was about to say the United States. It was released in the US a few months ago.
Yeah, sure.
But the UK, and they're raving about it. So I'm keen to see some of their latest films. So lots to see in terms of that Busan's program this year.
And what about you, Darcy? What stands out for you in the program?
Well, I mean, the festival has always given a strong focus to other Asian countries as well. And so for me, it's a great opportunity to catch up with films from Southeast Asia and other countries. I mean, there is a focus on Indonesian cinema, which is interesting because I think that industry is going to be bigger and bigger in the coming years. It feels sort of like, Korean cinema did at the start of its revival. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to catching some of those films and, as usual, like meeting lots of people and seeing as many new Korean films as well.
That sounds great. Once again, the Busan International Film Festival starts on October 4th. The tickets for the opening and closing ceremony, as well as the Asia Contents Award and the Global OTT Awards, begin next Wednesday, while tickets for the general screenings begin next week, Friday. Okay, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Darcy, Jason, thank you as always, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
See you next time.